What happens when a government agency decides that court orders don't matter? That's not just a dramatic question, it's the heart of a battle playing out inside Congress, and it exposes something much bigger than politics. It's about whether the Constitution, the foundation of American democracy, still holds real power, or whether government leaders can simply choose when to follow it. That question came front and center when Representative Shri Thanedar went head-to-head with Secretary Kristi Noem. At first glance, it looked like another tense exchange in a committee hearing. But listen closely and you'll realize this wasn't routine oversight. It was a clash about the survival of checks and balances, a test of whether the government still answers to the law, or whether the law itself is becoming optional for those in power. Thanedar set the tone immediately.
Member, Secretary Noem, the Constitution of the United States establishes a federal government divided into three branches. It is Congress that makes the laws, the President who takes care that the laws are faithfully executed, and it is the judicial department that says what the law is. The constitutional separation of powers and system of checks and balances is necessary for the protection of liberty, and any violation undermines the rights and liberties of everyone in the United States. The Trump administration has repeatedly ignored the federal courts, including the Supreme Court. President Trump has even said that, and I quote, doesn't know, end quote, whether he has to uphold the Constitution. The President of the United States said, doesn't know. Secretary Noem, is it the policy of the Department of Homeland Security to follow orders issued by federal courts?
Yes, we are following all federal court orders.
So the answer is yes?
We are following all federal court orders, yes.
Well, as just one of the many examples, a federal judge required FEMA, and I quote, immediately cease, in the code, efforts to withhold disbursement of federal grant funding appropriated by Congress. The court later found evidence that FEMA, an agency under your purview, was in direct violation of the court orders. So court orders were not followed, as you see. Yes or no?
We are following court orders. Grants are being reevaluated, but they are being obligated and appropriated according to how Congress has laid out.
Well, Secretary Noem, we all took an oath to uphold the laws and Constitution of the United States. It is a sad day that I have to sit here and issue a reminder. You and the Department of Homeland Security must respect the Constitution and the courts. Mr. Chairman, I want to yield my rest of my time to the gentleman from New York.
Gentleman yields. Mr. Goldman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Thanedar. Secretary Noem, your opening statement includes a lot of data and numbers, but it doesn't mention asylum.
He reminded Noem, and by extension the Department of Homeland Security, of something every official swears, the oath of office: to uphold the Constitution of the United States, not to uphold party politics, not to protect an administration, not to defend power for its own sake, but to serve the Constitution and the people. That oath exists because the Constitution designed a system of three branches. Congress makes the laws, the President enforces them, the judiciary interprets them. That balance is not symbolic, it's the very mechanism that guards liberty. And when one branch ignores the other, when the executive shrugs at the judiciary, history shows us the consequences are never small. Democracies do not collapse overnight. They collapse when one branch quietly begins to claim authority over the rest. So Thanedar asked the obvious but essential question: does the Department of Homeland Security follow federal court orders? A yes or no question. And Noem, without hesitation, said yes. She repeated it. She insisted they follow every order. On the surface it sounded reassuring. But Thanedar didn't stop there. He brought receipts. He cited an example that shredded her claim. FEMA, which operates under DHS authority, had been ordered by a federal judge to release disaster relief funds immediately. Not eventually. Not after review. Immediately. The order was clear, written in black and white, and yet FEMA failed to comply. The agency dragged its feet withholding funds in direct violation of that ruling. That's when the contradictions became undeniable. Either DHS leadership ignored the judiciary outright, or they lost control of their own agencies. Neither answer looks good. Both options mean one thing: the Constitution was brushed aside. And Thanedar's words cut deeper than any statistic could. We all took an oath to uphold the Constitution. It is a sad day that I have to sit here and issue a reminder. Think about that. A member of Congress reminding a cabinet secretary of her sworn duty. That isn't business as usual. That's a red flashing alarm. But why does this one fight matter so much? Because the consequences ripple outward. If FEMA can ignore a court ruling on disaster funding, what's to stop other agencies from ignoring rulings on civil rights, on voting access, on healthcare protections, or environmental safeguards? Once government leaders treat court rulings as optional, the entire system of checks and balances begins to unravel. This is not just a bureaucratic squabble, it's about whether the rule of law still binds the executive branch. And when that chain snaps, history tells us exactly what comes next: concentrated power, lost freedoms, creeping authoritarianism. Thanedar's challenge was more than political theater. It was a line in the sand, a warning about how fragile democracy becomes when leaders dismiss the judiciary. And here's the part that should make you stop and think this isn't abstract. It's not just Washington insiders clashing in hearing rooms. It's about you. Imagine your community hit by a hurricane or wildfire. A court orders FEMA to release relief funds, and your town is counting on that money to rebuild schools, homes, and hospitals. But what if FEMA shrugs and delays, deciding it knows better than the courts? What if the aid never comes? That's not a distant worry. That's exactly what Thanedar exposed. Once agencies start ignoring judges, ordinary citizens lose their last shield. Courts are the place you turn when your rights are threatened, when government oversteps, when injustice needs correcting. If that shield is cracked, your protections vanish. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or Independent, your rights depend on courts being respected. Thanedar pressed this point with precision. He wasn't arguing about a single program or a single grant. He was demanding accountability. He was saying that if the Constitution means anything at all, then no agency, no secretary, no administration can place itself above the law. And in that moment he reminded Americans of a simple truth: once accountability becomes optional, democracy itself is on borrowed time. Now, some defenders of DHS tried to spin the FEMA example. They claimed the funds were being re-evaluated, that processes were still underway. But that argument dodges the core fact: a federal judge had issued a direct order. And when agencies delay, stall, or reinterpret clear rulings, they're not just playing with paperwork, they're undermining the authority of the judiciary itself. And that's the bigger picture. Because the issue isn't just one agency or one secretary, it's the precedent. If FEMA can ignore a court order, what message does that send to the rest of government? What happens the next time a ruling protects civil liberties, voting rights, or free speech, and the executive branch simply decides it doesn't feel like complying? If courts can be sidelined, then no law, no ruling, no right is truly safe. This is how democracy erodes, not in a single collapse, but in small dismissals of accountability that pile up until checks and balances are nothing more than words in a textbook. And that's what made Thanedar's persistence so important. He forced the record to reflect what was really happening. He refused to let Noem hide behind easy assurances. He reminded the American people that defending the Constitution is not optional. And this brings us back to you. Because what's at stake isn't just a congressional hearing, it's your future. It's your disaster aid, your health care, your community funding, your civil rights. If government agencies can pick and choose which court orders they follow, then citizens are left defenseless. The last line of accountability disappears. And when accountability dies in silence, democracy doesn't last long after. That's why Thanedar's words should echo beyond Capitol Hill. They're not just a reminder to one secretary. They're a reminder to every American that vigilance matters. That democracy isn't self-sustaining. It survives only if the people insist on it, only if the people demand that leaders respect the rule of law. Because the Constitution is not a suggestion, it is the supreme law of the land. It doesn't belong to presidents or cabinet secretaries. It belongs to the people. And when officials try to treat it as optional, it's up to the people to push back, to speak up, to refuse to look away. So don't treat this as just another heated exchange in Congress. Treat it as a wake-up call. If FEMA can ignore a judge in Washington, then tomorrow it could be your community left without relief, your rights left without protection, your voice left without power. This story is not about headlines, it's about the foundation of liberty itself, and that's why this moment matters so much. Because when Thanedar pressed Noem, he wasn't just scoring political points, he was reminding America that accountability cannot survive if we're willing to look the other way. He was saying that the oath to uphold the Constitution must still mean something, and that every official, no matter how high their office, must answer to the law. If you believe that no agency, no secretary, no president should be above the Constitution, then this is the time to stay engaged. Share this story, keep the pressure on. Let those in power know that Americans are watching, because the day the courts can be ignored without consequence is the day democracy itself starts to slip away. And if you care about protecting the Constitution, if you care about keeping accountability alive, then don't just watch and move on. Make your voice part of the record. Because the Constitution doesn't defend itself, it relies on all of us to defend it. And if we fail to demand that leaders respect the rule of law, we may wake up to find that the law no longer protects us at all.